welcome back here. So in these chapters, we will learn about the externalities and public goods. Okay, so originally other textbooks are divided into the externalities and the public goods, but this textbook deals with these two things together. Okay, so first we learn about externalities as one of factor of market failure. Okay, externalities. Okay, so if your actions unintentionally harms others, so it's negative externalities. Okay, so if you define a negative externalities, it looks like this. Negative externality is an active activities whose side effects harm bystanders. Okay, so negative externalities kinds of side effects. Okay, so for example, if others people smoke near you, right? So for example, someone are smoking near you, right? So smoke will harm your health, right? So you will become second-hand smoker. Okay, so it can harm to your health, right? So it can cause the cancer. Okay, so let me give you another example is, so if one student makes a noise in class, right, you can concentrate on the class and learn less, right? And another example is when you go to a BTS concert, okay? So let's say that a tall person is standing in front of you, right? Then you won't be able to see BTS, right? So all of these examples are negative externalities, right? So another example is being disrupted during the class. Okay, you can concentrate on your class, so you will learn less. Okay, so these problems are kinds of side effect, and it could be caused socially. Okay, so so there's the inefficient resources allocations. Okay, so negative externalities cause the problems. So it could be a kinds of cost socially. Okay, but there's not always negative externalities. There are also positive externalities. Next one is positive externality. Okay, so positive externalities refers to actions that unintentionally helps others. Okay, so I can define the positive externality. It's kinds of benefits. Okay, so these kinds of benefits can affect bystander. Okay, so in this case, your behavior helps other people. Okay, unintentionally, right? So For examples, planting trees purifies the air and it makes the people around you healthy. Okay. So for example, plant a tree. Okay, it causes to improve air condition. Okay, so in the end, everyone can be healthy. Okay, so another example is if the United States develops a new and outstanding technologies, so it can enrich your life by making new devices. Okay, so all of these are example of positive externalities. Okay, so these kinds of positive externalities is kinds of the benefits you have. Okay, so another example is discover a brilliant new scientific breakthrough. So get benefits from device. Okay, that is the positive externalities. So let's look at the marginal social cost and benefits of negative externalities. Next one is we focus on the marginal social cost. Cost and benefits. Okay, so we focus on at first negative externalities. Okay, so negative externalities incur the external cost. Okay, so negative externalities creates external cost. Okay, so this is what people around you are going to pay for. Okay, so there's a social cost and there's a private cost. So this cost can affect the society as a whole. Okay, so this kinds of external cost is the cost imposed on the bystander. On bystanders. Okay, so so this kinds of cost can be both what private or social cost. Okay, so this private is include individual or organizations. Okay, individuals or organization. Okay, so as we know, the supply curve is the marginal cost that the producers has to pay for a unit of goods. Okay, so supply curve is marginal cost, okay, paid by sellers from extra units. Right? So this called marginal private cost here. Marginal private cost. Okay, so the producers focus on the marginal private cost. Okay, in addition, the marginal external cost incurred by the externalities is understood by the bystanders. Okay, so it's usually caused by a third part, so it's hard to notice. Okay, so you can now focus on this marginal external cost. Okay, so marginal external cost can be added in here. Marginal external cost. Okay, so this kinds of marginal external cost imposed by bystander. Okay, so we cannot realize it, so we cannot focus on here. Okay, so on the other hand, socially we can focus on this kinds of only marginal cost, so which is the marginal private cost. Okay, we can pay attention. Okay, so let's look at the graph. Here, so y-axis is the marginal cost. Okay, and here is the quantity supplied. Right, so how can you find supply curve? Here, which is the upward sloping. So as you know that supply curve in here, so marginal private cost, right? So this one is marginal private cost curve, correct? So if we have a marginal external cost, okay, so supply curve will shift to left. Here, so this gap would be marginal external cost. Okay, so what is the red one? This line. This line is the marginal social cost. So marginal social cost, right? So that is the socially optimal supply curve. Okay, so what is the marginal social cost curve? The marginal social cost curve is a sum of the marginal external cost plus marginal private cost, right? Do you agree? Okay. So, so what happened to the positive externality effect? The positive externalities are external benefits from those around them, right? So thus external benefits can be additional benefits for consumers who consume a unit of goods. Okay. Let me down here. Positive externalities. Okay, that is kinds of external benefits, okay, by the imposed on the bystander. So these kinds of benefits according to the bystander. Okay. Okay. So but it is not easy to notice these kinds of benefits socially. So let's talk about problems that arise later. Okay, so as we know that the demand curve is the marginal benefit curve, okay? So therefore, in the graph, we can analyze the externalities, right? So this marginal benefit curve is called the marginal private curve. Okay. So this kinds of demand curve is marginal benefit curve. Okay. So this one is marginal private benefit. Okay. Just like the supply curve. So we can realize it, this how much marginal private benefits, but in terms of marginal external benefits, we cannot recognize it, okay? So there is, if we have positive externalities, we can have a marginal external benefit. Okay. So it's the marginal benefit that consumers unintentionally get from the positive externalities, right? So, and the benefits from the externalities is marginal external benefits, as we know. So if you graph it, it looks like this, okay? So here, y-axis is marginal benefits. Okay, here is the quantity demanded. Okay, so how can you find demand curve? Demand curve would be downward sloping. Okay, so in here's marginal benefit curve is marginal private benefit. So this one is marginal private benefit. Okay, so if we have the positive externalities, we can have marginal external benefits. Okay, so demand curve will shift to the right. Okay, so this gap would be marginal external benefits. Okay. Benefits. Okay. So what is this blue line? Marginal social benefits. Okay. So you can present the socially optimal benefits, right? So this kinds of marginal social benefit is sum of marginal external benefits and the marginal private benefit, which is the demand curve, right? Is it clear? So what are the problems caused by externalities? Externality problems. Okay. So there's a problem that the cost and benefits incurred by negative externalities and positive externalities are not socially recognized. So there's a possibility that resources allocation is not efficiently distributed. So when social outcome is efficient, okay, social outcome is efficient, it can be optimal outcomes. Okay. If it is efficient. Right? So what are the rational role of the society in this case? So when comparing the marginal social benefit and marginal social cost, the marginal social benefit must be greater, right, than equal. So the optimal outcome is when these two are equal. That is, when marginal social benefit and marginal social cost are equal. Okay. Rational law for society is marginal social benefit is greater than marginal social cost, right? So when we have optimal outcomes, it would be marginal social benefit equal to marginal social cost. Okay, so under these conditions, we have optimal outcomes. Okay. Right? So the negative externalities, as we saw in the graph earlier, differs as much as marginal external cost, okay, between marginal social cost and marginal private cost. So I draw it again. Here is the supply curve and demand curve. We have a count point. And in here, supply curve is marginal private cost. Okay. And demand curve is marginal private benefit. Okay. So in this point where the marginal private cost is equal to marginal private cost, benefit, we have equilibrium quantity. Okay, if we have marginal external cost, okay, so marginal private cost will shift to the left, right? It looks like this. Right? So we have what? Marginal social cost. Correct? So at this point, as you know that this point is where the marginal social cost is equal to marginal private benefits, right? So this point is actually socially optimal quantity. Right? So what happened in here? Actually, if we compare the between equilibrium quantity and a socially optimal quantity, so we have overproductions. Okay. Problem. Even though this point here is a socially optimal quantity, but in the market we are producing the equilibrium quantity in here, right? Which is greater than socially optimal quantity, right? So it caused the overproduction problem. Okay. For example, the cost of pollution is socially unnoticed, right? So companies create far more pollutions than they need in society because the society cannot recognize these kinds of cost, right? So this is why we have overproduction problem. Okay. So we can realize that the negative externalities cause the overproductions problem. That is, goods are overproduced. Okay. For examples, cost of pollution. Right? Is it clear? So let's look at the problems that arise from the positive externalities. Next one is positive externality. Okay, so these kinds of positive externalities are side effects that occur when your actions benefit third parties. Okay, so positive externalities kinds of the side effects of your actions benefits bystander. Okay, so let's take a look at the graph here. So here is marginal private cost. I just let the MPC, the marginal private cost, and this one is demand curve, which is the marginal private benefits. Okay, do you agree? So this point is the where marginal private cost is equal to marginal private benefits. Okay, so that is a socially optimal quantity. That is an equilibrium quantity. There's actual quantities we are producing, right? But if we have a marginal external benefits, right? So made by the positive externalities, so the marginal private benefits will shift to the right. So we have a marginal social benefits. Okay. Marginal social benefits, right? So these kinds of marginal social benefits is sum of the marginal external benefits plus marginal private benefits, right? So this point is where the marginal private cost here, but private cost and is equal to marginal social benefits, right? So these quantities would be socially optimal quantity, right? Okay, so let's compare the two things, which are socially optimal quantity and equilibrium quantities. So what happened? It happened on the production problem. Right? Because even though this point is a socially optimal quantity, but actually we are producing this quantity amount, right? So we have on the production problem, right? So so there's a two little positive externalities in the market, okay? So in the market, too few positive externalities. Okay, so for examples, I can say that it is a flu shot. Okay, so flu shots can improve the people's health, so it creates a positive externality, right? But despite these social benefits, too few people get flu shot, right? So So I can explain this one is using a blue shot, right? So two few people get flu shots. Okay. So there's kinds of example of underproductions. Okay. So next one is how do you solve this problem of externalities? So solving externality problems. So how can you solve this problem? The problem with externality is that it does not produce socially optimal outcomes, as you know, so it causes the worst outcomes. So first thing is to use private bargaining. Private bargaining, right? So first of all, we need to know about side payment. Side payment. Okay, so what is a side payment? Side payment is the when someone's harm you, you have to pay them much instead. Okay, so I will give an example later. If someone else actions harm you, okay, you can pay them to do something else instead. You can pay them to do something else instead. Okay, there's a side payment. So for examples, so if your neighbors plays music too loudly, it will disturb your sleep on the night, right? So if the value of sleeping is quietly is $5, right? You are paying $5 to that neighbors, right? Because it is efficient. So this kinds of $5 is the side payment. Okay, so we are using this private bargaining. So for example, your neighbors loud music. For your neighbors loud music, you need to pay $5, okay, which is the side payment. Okay, it is the kinds of quite value. It has the quite value. Okay, because it is effective. Right? Does it make sense? So the representative theory in the private bargain is Cauchy theorem. Okay. Have you ever been heard that kinds of Cauchy theorem? It is to solve the problem of the legitimate property rights without incurring cost by using a bargaining system. Okay, so the externality problems can be solved by the private bargaining, which is a way to solve it without government interventions. Okay, so it's going to be efficient, but what we need to know is that the private bargaining involves what? Side payment. Okay, so Cauchy theorem is using a bargaining system. So it is the costless, and you can have legal property rights. Right? So from this one, externality problems can be solved, okay, by private bargaining, okay, without any government interventions. So it is kinds of using market system, right? So it is effective. Okay. So as you know that this kinds of price bargaining involves side payment. Bargaining involves what? Side payment. Okay? Is it clear? Right? This is one of the way to solve the externality problems. Okay? So the second one is corrective tax and subsidies. And subsidies. So this is the principle of the changing the incentive of producers and consumers using prices. Okay, so this kinds of price instrument. So this is because changes in the price in the market changes your behavior, okay, of consumers and producers. So taxes and subsidies can correct the market prices when externalities occur. Okay, so using corrective taxes and subsidies is to focus on using prices to change incentive of buyers and sellers. Okay, do you agree? Right? So these kinds of taxes and subsidies, right, can correct the market price. Market prices. Okay, so you can call it as corrective taxes. Okay, other word is 피고비안 tax. Corrective taxes is equal 피고비안 tax. It is called 피고비안 tax because it was created by the England economist Pigu. Okay, so for example, tax as much as it pollutes the environment. Okay, so it is giving a environmental tax. So these kinds of taxes are imposed as much as marginal external cost, allowing them to reach optimal quantity. So you can solve these kinds of negative externalities using a corrective tax. Okay. So Pigouvian tax is imposing an environmental tax. Okay, for air pollutions. So you can impose tax as much as marginal external cost. Okay, and then you can solve negative externalities. Okay, so let's take a look at the graph, right? So marginal social cost curve is located on the left side of a marginal private cost curve. So let's look at the graph here. So marginal, here's marginal private cost. Okay, and as you know that, here is marginal social cost. Okay, so this case would be marginal external cost, right? So, and then we have our demand curve in here. Demand curve actually marginal social benefits curve, right? So at first, here is the what? Equilibrium quantity. Okay. Right? Where is the socially optimal quantity? Here. Okay. Do you remember socially optimal quantity? Right? So these gaps would be, what was that? Marginal external cost. Okay. So to solve the overproduction problems, the government usually impose the tax as much as marginal external cost. Tax on kinds of this amount. Right? So what happened after that? We have new supply curve. Okay. So what happens? We have new quantity in here. This point is new quantity we have. So we can produce a socially optimal quantity, right? Does make sense? Okay. So after getting a new supply curve, we can get a new quantity, which is the equal to socially optimal quantity, right? So that is the problems of overproduction is solved. Okay. Marginal private cost plus corrective tax. Correct? So we have new supply curve. Okay, so as you know that corrective tax push the supply upward. And then we have the point where corrective tax equal to marginal external cost. And then we have new supply curve. Which is equal to marginal private cost. Okay. So, and then after that, in the end, we have a new equilibrium with the tax. Equilibrium with the tax. Okay, so we can solve the negative extra negative problem. So we have socially optimal quantity. Okay, is it clear? Right? So what about the collective subsidies? The corrective subsidies can solve the positive externalities. Okay, so for examples, take an insurance company. So when you sign up for the insurance company and pay for it, you can get a benefits only when you actually have a problem. So you have an underproduction problem. Okay, insurance company. But you have underproduction problem. Right? But let's say that if you buy an alarm system to prevent theft in your home, for this one, the government will grant you subsidies, right? Government impose a subsidy for purchasing of alarm item. Alarm system to prevent a theft. Right? So what happened in this case? Then you don't need to pay the insurance company every time, right? So the subsidies can solve this problem, which is underproductions. Okay. So underproduction fixed. Okay. Do you agree? So in conclusions, the corrective tax and corrective subsidies can solve the overproduction and underproduction problem respectively. Okay, so that's why we can solve the problems of market failure, right? So in the end, corrective tax can solve the what? Overproduction. Problem. Okay, and corrective subsidy can solve underproduction. Okay, that is our result. Okay, any questions about this? So next one is cap and trade. Okay, so if the taxes were a price instrument, then caps and trade are quantity instruments. Right? So so it's a quantity regulations. Okay, so it is about regulating the quantity of harmful behavior. So government policymakers regulate the amount of pollutants from the factories. The most representative example is quota. Okay. Example here, right? So what was a quota? Quota is to restrict the what? Quantity, right? So quotas can address the negative externalities. So overproduction problems have caused the factories to dump more pollutants than socially optimal quantities. However, the limiting the amount of these pollutants through the quotas will not cause these problems. Okay, so I will show you what happens. Here, right? So here is the marginal social cost. here's a marginal social benefit. Right? So if we have negative externalities, sorry, here is the marginal private cost. So where is the marginal social cost? Left hand side, right? Here is the marginal social cost, right? So if we know that, actually that here this point is the socially optimal quantity. On the other hand, this is the actual quantity we have, right? So we have underproduction problem. Sorry, we have overproduction problem, right? So in order to solve these problems, government usually impose the quota in here, okay, which is same with the marginal social cost. So here's the quota. Okay, so what happened? Quantity will shift to the left. We have less quantities. We have new quantity in here. Okay, which is equal to socially optimal outcome. Optimal outcome. Right? Do you agree? So the quotas can fix the negative externalities, right? So therefore it is the content regulations that impose the fixed permissions, right? So content regulations, so these kinds of quantity regulations implemented by allocating a fixed amount of permits. Okay, in order to solve the negative externalities. Okay, so in the end, here, what was the cap? Cap is amount of pollutants thrown away. Pollution. Okay, what is the trade? Trade is issuing pollution permits from government. Pollution permits. Okay, that is the law of a quota. Okay, which is the to regulate the quantity, right? Got it? Any questions about this? That is an example of cap and trade. Okay, so finally, there's a law and rules and regulations. Laws, rules, and regulations. Okay, so we run about how to zoning law before. What was it? This prevents you from building in a particular area to ensure your eyesore, right? There's kinds of example of laws and rules and regulations. So that is preventing you from constructing a building okay. So another example is at the enterprise level, these companies. Okay, the IT department in the companies install the anti-software programs in order to prevent virus or hackers. Okay, there is anti-software program, okay, to protect virus or hackers. Right? So then what? You can prevent the damages caused by virus and infections in the company, right? But these rules are the ambiguous tool. Blunt instrument. Right? So that would be less of things you need to use. So when other factors are private bargaining, corrective taxes, or corrective subsidies, caps and trade are impossible, right? So you can use the law and laws and regulation and then, okay? So it should only be used when other solutions are unavailable because these kinds of law and regulation are very strong, right? So only when the solutions are not feasible. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay, so now let's look at the public goods. Which is very important concept in economics. So public goods means goods with a non-exclusive and non-liber. Okay. Non-excludable and non-liber. So we can call it as public goods. Okay, so non-exclusive goods are available to all citizens, right? Because non-exclusive means that the goods cannot be excluded from use. Non-libers means that there's no competitions with others in using it, so this is free for charge and allows a lot of people to consume it, right? So there's non-excludable and non-liber. So non-excludable means that cannot easily be excluded from using it, right? So good is available to all citizens. To all people. Okay. What about non-libers? Non-libers is use of it does not subtract from others. Okay. So under these conditions, provide for free. Okay. So as more people consume. Good does not dwindle. Okay, so for examples, public goods are military forces. Example is military forces. Okay, these kinds of military forces serves as a defense for the safety of the country. Okay, these kinds of profits are given to all citizens. So this is the one of the public goods. Okay, national defense. So many all citizens get these kinds of benefits. Benefits all citizens. Okay. Or how about air? What about air? So what evidence can drink is air, right? So no one is interfering with your breathing. Okay. So air is also public goods. But what about pizza? So if you bought a pizza, can someone interrupt you from eating it? That would be a crime, right? So and if someone else buy all the pizza, you cannot buy, right? So it's got a libel. So this is called private goods. Okay, for examples, there's pizza. Okay, so private goods has the libel and the excludable. Plus excludable characteristic. Okay, because it is paid by individuals. Okay, that is another good, right? So if there is a non-libel characteristic, the pre-write problems will occur. So if there's non-libel, there is a that this could be occur pre-write problems. Okay, so pre-write problem is if in this case that means that if libels, there is no problem. So what is the pre-write problem? Have you heard that this kinds of problem here? This means that you can understand the pre-write problem by thinking about group project. So the one person getting a task score without any effort, that means that we have pre-write problem in society. Okay, so if we have libels, so it can solve the problem. Okay, so it means that without any bearing cost, okay, enjoying the benefit, okay, which is the pre-write problems. Okay, so the government usually provides a public goods such as the park. Okay, in New York there's the Central Park, so you can use everyone can use the Central Park. Okay, no one can prevent using this one, right? So another example is the providing the scientific research or public education. Okay, so after that everyone can get the benefits from scientific research and public education. So in this sense, public goods are positive externalities because everyone can get the benefits, right? But what happened? This causes underproduction problems. Okay. Public goods cause underproduction problem. because it is kind of positive externalities. Okay, do you agree? So the following one is the called club goods. Okay, so club goods is excludable. The characteristic is excludable but do not have a libels. Okay. Excludable but non-libel. Okay, for examples, these kinds of exclusions occurs when companies try to provide public goods to citizens. So they purchase the land to build the roads and install the toll booths at the entrance. Then the people have to pay for this road when they use it, right? So the use of the road produce the high marginal benefits, but when you use this road, when you don't have that much traffic, the marginal cost could be zero. Okay, so this can lead to underproduction issue. So let me write down here. Businesses try to find a way to public goods that is excludable. Way to public goods. Okay, equals excludable. So for constructing the road, they purchased the land to build a road, and they set up the toll booths. Okay. What is that? Only let the people pass if you pay them. Okay. Right? So in this case, they have higher marginal benefits. Okay. But when there's not much traffic, their marginal cost is equal to zero, right? So we have underproduction problem. Correct? So finally, there's a common resources. Okay, so this means the goods that have a libel and are non-exclusive. But non-excludable. Okay, so for examples, if you go to river and catch a fish, no one can stop you from catching a fish, and you can benefit personally from catching a fish. That way, the number of fish in the river is getting small and smaller. Okay, so this could be some kinds of cost in social. So that's the why the common strategic problem arises. Okay, so this is problem caused by overconsumptions. So from common resources, it causes the tragedy of commons. Okay, for example, fishing. If you go to the river, you can get a fish and catch a fish, right? So you can get a private benefit. Okay. What was the cost? The number of pieces decreases, right? So it costs strategy of commerce. Okay, because of overconsumption. Okay, overconsumption's common resources. So how do you solve these kinds of common strategies problem? So when you catch a fish, you need to pay for license, and then the government give you the rights to catch a fish, right? So there's a so in Lawrence there's a large lake called Clinton Lake here, so you must have a license to catch a fish here. So you have to pay to catch a fish in the lake, otherwise everyone will catch a fish, resulting in a decreasing number of fish. Okay, so limiting consumptions is a solution to the common strategy problem. Okay, so government usually assigned ownership rights. Okay, it is to limit consumption. Okay, is it clear? So therefore, if we can organize this one comprehensively, so we can organize it into 2x2 boxes. Okay. Here. So here's excludable. Here's a non-excludable. Here's a libelous. Here's non-libelous. So, if the good has the excludable and libelous, what was that? Private goods. Okay. How was it here? If the good has a libelous and non-excludable, that is common goods. Okay. So it happens what? Strategy of commons. Okay. So if the good has the excludable and non-libelous, we have it is club goods. Okay, which is what? Private lot. How about this? How about this one? If we have non-excludable and non-libelous, what is that? Public goods. Good. Okay, so you can use these 2x2 tables. So with the homework and quizzes, it could be very useful. Okay, so that's all the chapter 10. Next time we will study chapter 11. Okay, thank you.